Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and also feel free to leave a comment. The video that I am doing here is about the children of Henry II. I could have made the title The Children of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, but there are a couple of illegitimate children that I wanted to include in the video, so I had to exclude Eleanor from the title of the video. So if you're wondering why it's only Henry II in the title, that's it. He kept mistresses, and therefore he produced illegitimate children. The firstborn son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine was called William. He was born in 1153, but died no later than 1156. In his short life, he held the title Count of Poitiers, but obviously, given his age, this was only a nominal title. The image that you see is an unrealistic portrayal of William, given that he was only a toddler when he died. The next child to be born to Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine was Henry, who would become known as the Young King when he was crowned co-king alongside his father in 1170. Henry, though, would suffocate under his father's iron grip over him, and he would die a frustrated young man in 1183 when he was just 28. Henry the Young King was popular during his day, earning himself a reputation as a fine jouster. He, however, perhaps lacked the necessary skills and qualities required in a medieval king, which is perhaps what Henry II saw in him, and perhaps why he was so reluctant to hand over more power to the young king and his brothers. The first daughter to be born to the royal couple was called Matilda, named after Henry's mother. Matilda would go on to marry the Duke of Saxony, Henry the Lion, and with him she'd have a number of children, including a boy named Otto, who would become Holy Roman Emperor. In 1157, Eleanor gave birth to another son. He was called Richard, and he would succeed Henry II as king in 1189 as King Richard I. He would go on to become known as Richard the Lionheart for his extraordinary accomplishments during the Third Crusade. His legacy wasn't all positive, however, and his premature death in 1199 left the throne open for one of his brothers to snatch the throne. More on that in a minute. In 1158, another son was born to the king and queen. This was Geoffrey. Alongside his brothers, Henry the Young King and Richard, Geoffrey would give their father no end of problems by going into open rebellion against him and making an alliance with the French monarchy. Geoffrey would become close friends with the French heir, Philip, who would become Philip II in 1180. When Geoffrey died prematurely in 1185, Philip II was said to have been so overcome with grief that he threatened to throw himself into Geoffrey's grave. The second daughter to be born to Eleanor and Henry was also named Elena. She would go on to make a prestigious marriage with the King of Castile, Alfonso VIII. With him, she seemed to have had a good relationship, and she mourned his passing in 1214. However, Eleanor didn't have much time to mourn, and she died less than a month later after her husband. In 1165, the final daughter of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine was born. She was named Joan. First, she would become Queen of Sicily, and after her first husband had died, she would then go on to marry the Count of Toulouse. Joan would sadly die in childbirth in 1199, aged around 33, and this emphasises the risks of childbirth in the 12th century and just how remarkable an accomplishment it was for women like Eleanor to produce as many healthy children as she did for her husband. Perhaps Henry II should have been a bit more grateful to his wife. In 1166, John, the final child of the royal couple, was born. He would prove to be a total moron. On the death of his brother Richard I in 1199, John wrongfully usurped the throne. The throne should not even have passed to him. It should have gone to his nephew, Arthur, the son of Geoffrey, John's older brother, who had died in 1185. However, John stole the throne and then, to make matters even worse, would probably later murder Arthur. I say probably, as it's not 100% certain that John did the deed, but it's almost certain. His reign would prove to be a total disaster. The only good thing that would come out of it would be Magna Carta. John had very few redeeming qualities. He was even, in fact, his father's favourite child. But as his father lay dying, John went into open rebellion against Henry II. This was the final straw for the old king, who died a broken-hearted man. Henry had 3 illegitimate children. His first was named Geoffrey, who was born in the early 1150s, before he'd probably even met Eleanor. Geoffrey would go on to become Archbishop of York, and he would have a turbulent relationship with 2 of his half-brothers, Richard I and then King John. The second illegitimate child born to Henry was named William. He would have a better relationship with King John, and he would serve him loyally, and God knows King John needed it. The final illegitimate son for Henry II was named Morgan, who would go on to become Bishop of Durham. Not much is known about Morgan or his life. It's worth noting in 1167 that Henry II had 2 sons born to him. One was legitimate, the future King John. One wasn't, his illegitimate son, William. I think it's fair to say that this would have caused Eleanor a fair bit of angst and resentment. She had produced for Henry a whole host of children, including 4 surviving sons. The fact that Henry was keeping mistresses caused her not only resentment but also hurt and perhaps even heartache. It would have been extremely frustrating that Henry's attentions were focused now on other women. John would be Eleanor's final child. She knew that she was moving past childbearing age. But she would not want to become sidelined, which Henry was now threatening to do by having illegitimate children. And he would go on to have one more as well, although it's not quite sure when his final child, Morgan, was born. These final two illegitimate children that were born to Henry, you can't put too much emphasis on the first child, as that happened when he was still a young man, before he'd even met Eleanor, as I mentioned. But these final two illegitimate children would possibly have a damaging effect on the relationship between Henry and Eleanor. And it's said that Eleanor would even murder one of Henry's mistresses, a girl by the name of Rosamond. So this perhaps is an indicator of where Eleanor's mindset would have been in the late 1160s, as she now reached her mid to late 40s.